Well, if you're watching along online, we're taking a look at video that was compiled by reporter William J. Kelly on Twitter. Just search William J. Kelly, all one word, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and you'll see this. People doing donuts in the middle of the road in Chicago. A lot of activity, clogging streets. Just really an unsafe environment up there. And something that, wasn't just this weekend. It seems to be a regular occurrence every weekend with what are described as youth taking over streets, and compounded this past weekend with the celebrations for Mexican Independence Day. But then you start looking at some of the headlines here. And the headlines include an assistant principal fatally shot in the Loop. You've got at least 11 facing felony charges with 6 guns recovered downtown. You've got a DePaul student among several targeted in a North Side robbery spree. More cases reported in Wicker Park and Westtown. And you even have an arrest of a Cicero man accused of hitting an officer with wooden flagpoles and even cutting an officer's ear, according to reports out of Chicago. To talk more about this and other issues, we now join William Kelly. He is, of course, that reporter in Chicago who compiled that video from all kinds of different social media accounts. William, what is going on? Good morning. Hopefully you're safe.
Well, God bless you, Greg. Thank you for having me this morning. Yeah, if the police are in danger, then that means the citizens are in danger. I remember as a young news junkie nerd wannabe reporter watching video from Jakarta or Caracas, Venezuela, where rioters in the street would hit the police with wooden sticks, and thinking to myself, I couldn't even imagine a Chicago citizen, very few and far between, that would ever even think of hitting a Chicago police officer with a wooden stick. But that is exactly where we're at now, Greg. And it's unacceptable. And I'm a reporter, just the facts, ma'am, right? But I'm also a Chicagoan, born and raised on the South Side. And it breaks my heart to see this. If we have a population now in the city of Chicago that is willing to hit the police with beat the police with wooden sticks, what do you think they are willing to do to you?
Well, again, William, just looking at some of the headlines, you've got continued problems with robberies on the streets, and it seems to be spanning out all across the city. CWB Chicago reporting that some of the same actors seem to be suspected in hitting people with these robberies. I mean, that's one thing, of course, but then you get the story after story after story of shootings that are happening, and obviously that type of violent crime is a big issue. But there's other things that not just Chicago's having to contend with. You've got the end of cash bail. That also is very much top of mind as you see what happened over the weekend in Chicago. A headline here, William, is new bail reform isn't going to be perfect. And advocates say changes set to take effect today. Of course, today's the day, but those opponents are concerned that we're going to see some possible repeat offenders back on the streets after they're picked up on a nonviolent crime. What do you see happening in Chicago, and could that possibly be, spreading out into the suburbs, into different counties around Chicago and even further downstate?
100% right, Greg. And you know what? We deserve perfect. I remember one of the very first jobs I ever had as a kid was working at a neighborhood grocery store. And the manager put me out with a broom to sweep up some leftover soil from some type of a plant display, right? And he asked me if I was done. And I said, well, I think I got it like 90%. He said, no, make it perfect. Okay, well, if sweeping dirt in front of a grocery store needs to be perfect, then keeping violent repeat offenders off the streets of Chicago and Chicagoland and obviously the state of Illinois needs to be perfect, because you know what? When it's not perfect, people get raped, robbed, murdered. They have life-changing, altering, and potentially ending episodes. You have to wonder if the public, for decades now, I've asked myself what I call the eternal question. Are they doing it? Are they doing it on purpose? Or are they really that stupid? And I still to this day can't quite nail it down. But I will say this: I don't think Governor Pritzker is stupid. He recently retweeted somebody mocking the victims of violent crime. He retweeted it to his government account, if I'm not mistaken. I am a reporter, and but this made my blood boil. Within a stone's throw, not just walking distance, okay, within a stone's throw of where that video was recorded that the governor retweeted, 2 tourists were beaten by a mob of 8 to 10 people. They're still at large, no descriptions. We don't know who they are. Nobody's in custody. They punched these 2 young girls in the face, stole their possessions, their valuables, their phone, their purses, their jewelry. And in this day and age, obviously, with the modern, technology that we have, having your phone and your credit cards in the possession of people who have no morals, no impulse control, no sense of any decency is a life-changing event. It could take decades to sort out the ramifications of something like this. And yet we have public officials now, including our governor, who retweet it because they think it's funny. Greg, I think it's despicable.
William Kelly, a couple other things I want to touch on here before we wrap up is, of course, the migrant issue. We're seeing, 13,500, if not 14,000 migrants have come across the southern U.S. border and transported up to Chicago. More images of these migrants sleeping in tents along sidewalks outside of police stations. My understanding is the city council just used some tax increment finance funds to purchase, 10 acres to build a migrant shelter. News headlines of, military-grade migrant base camp tents going to be set up. How's the situation up there?
Well, once again, it's horrifying on every level. As somebody who loves Chicago, as somebody who reads books, as somebody who has studied history, I would almost go so far as I would be tempted to blame our mayor and our governor of stealing ideas from Karl Marx or Joseph Stalin. But I'm starting to wonder if Mayor Johnson has ever actually studied Karl Marx or Joseph Stalin. So it's maybe not fair to blame him for stealing these ideas. I think he literally thinks that opening government-owned and operated, city-owned and operated grocery stores and building tent cities is a good idea. Anyone who has spent a single winter in Chicago knows that living in a tent during the winter is a bad idea. Anyone who's studied history knows that this will go down in history as one of the perhaps worst ideas in the history of the United States of America. We're still talking about concentration camps that took place in the 20th century. And now, here in the 21st century, we're talking about setting up what can only be described as concentration camps in the city of Chicago. Greg, I was raised going to Catholic school. I was taught by nuns that that all evil needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing, to say nothing. Well, I'm just going to say it right now on your show, Greg. Concentration camps in Chicago is wrong, and it cannot be allowed to take place, taxpayer funded, because the people of Chicago will go down in history as being guilty of this. And I, for one, am publicly saying that I object.
William Kelly, finally here, of course, we've touched base with you on your ability to ask pointed questions, direct questions, important questions to city officials, and you still don't have your press pass with the city of Chicago. What's the latest?
Well, it looks like we're going to have to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Reporter WilliamJKelly.com. Thank you, Greg, for bringing it up, is where people can read the entire lawsuit. The truth has nothing to hide. This is a classic First Amendment case. If you want to contribute to my legal defense fund, which isn't it bizarre, third world, that a reporter in Chicago needs a legal defense fund to ask the mayor and the governor questions. But it's right there. It's a drop down. If you go to reporterwilliamjkelly.com, you'll see it. There are like three different ways to make a donation if you're so inclined. And I intend to continue to ask these questions and report. And it's important. I mean, this is no longer just a question of of news. This is now we're entering a very disturbing part of American history right now. This is not just Chicago history. We're talking about concentration camps in the winter. We're talking. We have essentially the shutdown of the business district from on a regular basis. We're talking about police officers being beaten with sticks. If we have, and now the people who were arrested by the police for felonies, with the Safety Act taking effect here in the state of Illinois today, will be right back out on the street. If they're not afraid to beat the police with sticks, they're not afraid to attack you. This is an emergency, and our government officials are either doing it on purpose, or they're too dumb to know the difference.
Well, and just to be clear, though, the lower level offenses, nonviolent offenses, can lead to no cash bail, but people can be held pending trial for more violent offenses. However, it has to be proven to a court in order for that to happen in short order within 48 hours of an arrest. So we'll be watching how all that plays out. Of course, William J. Kelly, greatly appreciate you taking the time. Be safe up there, okay?
Thank you, and God bless you, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.